His commentary and analysis is among the best, bar none. His words serve as a masterclass. He deconstructs the deceptions of the PSYOP war. He is the author of The Greatness Awaits You, the national leader of Australia One Party Incorporated, a monthly panel participant in JMC's Global Defense War, in a league of his own, an international treasure, a follower of Jesus Christ. He is Ricardo Bosi. Ricardo Bosi is a published author and speaker, international business consultant, former Australian Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel, having served 24 years in the Australian Army, including postings to the Special Air Service Regiment, the 1st Commando Regiment, Headquarters Special Operations, and the U.S. Combined Joint Task Force Headquarters in Kuwait. Don't miss JMC Broadcasting's Bosi Briefs, where John sits down with Ricardo, helping to connect the dots, making sense of the madness, keeping us all grounded and united as the battle between good and evil play out before our very eyes. Join John and Ricardo every other Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at jmcbroadcasting.com.
Monday, April 3rd, 2026. Hello, I am John Michael Chambers, and welcome back to Bosi Briefs. And thank you very much for joining us. This program publishes every other Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, where retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi weighs in on the current events that just took place. Please share these episodes and subscribe for free at jmcbroadcasting.com. Pardon me. Well, we're going to discuss Australia's debacle and what may be in store for Australia and the United States, let's see, now and a little bit down the line at the end of today's broadcast. So all our friends around the world that want to understand what's happening in Australia, and certainly our Australian friends know, we're going to be discussing that at the latter part of our broadcast today. All right, quick announcement. Mark your calendars. April 30th, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Joining us in our private room is the all-new Patriot Q&A Hour. 1 hour, Captain Rob Cunningham will be answering your questions for one solid hour. Learn about that option by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. I like to sort of take a different approach in this monologue and certainly have Colonel Bosi weigh in on this narrative. We'll call it 3D, 4D, and 5D consciousness. When we use the word ascension, it is in reference to elevating the human consciousness to a higher dimensional frequencies and realities. We can look at this in terms of 3D, 4D, and 5D consciousness. Humanity has operated from a 3D consciousness level for centuries. As humanity evolves, we are ascending into higher states of consciousness. Let's discuss 3D. 3D consciousness is made up of low, dense vibrational frequencies and operates in duality and separation. People operating from the 3D look at things from a linear perspective and only understand what they can see and touch as being reality. Life feels like the survival of the fittest, and you are identified by the way you look, the job you have, and the car you're driving. In this consciousness, there are many programs that condition the human mind to operate within this state. 4D. 4D consciousness is the gateway to 5D, but still operates in duality. It is the beginning of recognizing there is something more than self. And 4D consciousness begins to awaken you to the idea that we are all connected and there is more to life than what meets the eye. This is when we become curious about self-exploration and begin to connect to something more than ourselves. This is often referred to as an awakening. 5D consciousness. 5D consciousness resides in love and neutrality. There is no duality and no good or bad. In 5D, there is no competition, and we know there is enough in this universe for everyone. You feel overwhelming emotions of love and compassion for life, Mother Earth, and the stars. In this space, we live free, free from conditioning, and, and we live in oneness with ourself and with others. This is known as self-mastery and will create peace on earth. For those just coming aboard, who is Ricardo Bosi? Ricardo Bosi is an international treasure, former Australian Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel who served 24 years in the Australian Army. He's the national leader of Australia One Party. Please welcome back to Bosi Briefs retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi. Oh, we've got no audio on Ricardo. At least I don't hear him, to my producer. There we
Good
go.
evening, John. Thanks for your kind invitation. Absolute pleasure to be here.
Good to see you. You've got a beautiful gold tie on. We are entering the golden age soon. Very appropriate. And thank you, sir, for being here. I talked a little bit about 3D, 4D, and 5D consciousness in the very brief monologue. Any quick comments from you? Where are we at in that awakening? How would you categorize the populations stuck in 3D, 4D, and those ascending into 5D? What are your views of that?
You're on the money. It's very much like think about the Old West when you didn't have public schools. So you had a teacher would come to town, and she'd be teaching several different age groups all simultaneously. And the older age children, say maybe 12 to 14, would be assisting her to teach the younger ones. And so that's what planet Earth is like for souls. It's a school. It's rough.
Mm-hmm.
The lessons are learned very, very quickly. You can learn the same lessons elsewhere, but it takes a bit longer. But the rough nature of the Earth plane makes it a very fast school, fast but rough and ready. And so those densities that you're talking about are very real. They live together. Some are sent back to help the lower classes, let's say, advance as they go.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not new concepts. This is pretty standard fare out there. And so what you're saying is exactly correct. And it's not even a matter of, hey, I'm better than you because I'm 5D or whatever. That's not the way it works. Because if you're up there, as you said, that sense of competition doesn't exist. It's almost like an obligation, a desire to help raise others up. And again, that's not a criticism, because if you've been in the game longer, of course you're going to be further advanced. The kindergarten kids can't complain that the year 12 kids are doing more challenging things and seem to have their game together. And that's exactly what we're seeing on planet Earth. It's a cooperative spirit by the higher densities to help elevate the others. Now, one thing you didn't mention, which probably warrants mentioning, is between these densities. And there are 3 levels within each one. So, if you're a third density individual, you've got to go through 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and work your way 3.4. Then you jump to 4.1, away you go. But in between those densities, that's where evil penetrates. There's a very real threat. And they crawl their way up between the densities they're trying to get to the higher densities. And this is a subject we've never spoken of before, but I'm glad you raised it, because it gives a bit of color and texture and background to why we say what we say, why we do what we do. And so there's a real war going on with evil that's trying to climb up from those lower densities, the first and second. And their target is the Creator, the Almighty, call him whatever you want to, which is funny because it's not like the Creator can be threatened, but that's the stupidity of evil. They think they can, and they're trying to crawl up. And so we humans on Earth play a very important role in stopping that, in fighting it, not because the Almighty's in danger, can't be by definition, but other densities can be. They can be in danger, and so that's why battleground Earth is such a key node in this galactic war. So that's, for what it's worth. There's my 2 cents on that. But I'm glad you raised it, because it's a very important dimensional element to the discussion, and it helps people realize that what we're seeing might be important, and as tragic as some of the events being revealed are, in a larger sense, they're actually quite small. There is a much bigger, greater, more dangerous battle being fought.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. You know, what's coming to my mind and listening to you is, you think of the shuffle. We'll call it a slow shoe shuffle that's going on within the psyche of almost 8 billion people being jolted in. Hopefully, mostly coming up the ladder, but moving around in this space. And there's got to be an energy field that there is an energy field, of course, that reflects that, and that's why I see a lot of folks very grounded, but more folks not. And and so, of course, what's what we're all trying to do here is to bring everyone to the truth to help them get grounded. I always use this example. I think of the Earth. Let's assume it's flat just for a moment. That's a different broadcast we can have a conversation about later. But if you had a flat Earth, or you forget it, even if it's round, but you're standing on, the way I look at it is there's a carpet, you know, and we're all standing on it. Someone took that carpet and went like this, and everyone's just falling all over the place going, how did I get here? What's going on? That doesn't look the same anymore. That's kind of what's going on in a lot of our universes as we're moving through the 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 to 4.1, as you granularly indicated. And it just makes it an interesting time and an unsettling time for many. We hope to settle everybody a little bit more in this broadcast. Having said that, let's get into image number 2. If we can put that up on the screen for Ricardo and I to have a discussion. There it is. Okay, so just in the last 24 to 48 hours, this is what's been permeating throughout social media. Now, I don't have the videos to run on them to the public here, but I'm sure you've seen them. If not, you'll go look for them. But this was an image that been published by the White House, as I understand. What does it mean? I'm sure a lot of the researchers and OQ decoders and folks are having a field day with this stuff. I had people text me in the beginning and say, "Hey, John, looks like someone hacked the White House with these strange things coming out." I'm like, nah, no one's hacking the White House right now. This stuff is not an accident. And I stand by that. So anyway, we have this image. Let's go to the next image. We'll have Ricardo weigh in. Next image. This was another interesting one. And it was this little sound, and was, I think, female saying something or another. It was a couple of seconds long. And, I don't know, men, women, that looks like, to me, that looks like the pointy shoes of the Wicked Witch of the West and the Wizard of Oz. I'm not quite sure what the hell it is, but they're a pair of shoes. What does it mean? Who knows? Next one. All again coming out of the White House. Now, we're going to look at this, of course, our great president, Donald Trump, commander-in-chief, with the famous red folder there. Next image. These two images were put up side by side. Now, that's a pixelated image, if we will use that word. That go back to the other image, to my producer, the one we just saw. Yeah, and back to the pixelated. One would connect that this perhaps is that image. Next image, please, moving forward. All right, same sort of pixelated thing going on here. Here we have Rubio and Hegseth and Besant. Next image. Right? Kind of looks like the pixelated image of what we've just seen. And the next image, moving forward. All right. The common thing in every one of these images, of course, there's Vance, is there's cell phones in all these images. I mean, there's a lot to dissect in all this, of which I'm not spending the time on. I'll wait and see those that drum it up and relate it to an old Q post or something of the sort, and see what comes out of it. But I'm the 40,000 foot view guy. Move forward if there's one more image, so I can have Ricardo weigh in. I want to have all the images up there. Okay, go backwards to my producer. Okay, so we'll stay here on this image for a moment. So what I see here, if I'm a 40,000 foot view, is all I can comment on is the White House is clearly messaging us. And we're going to get into some other very specific things straight from government sites to focus on some things that are occurring. But what do you make of this, Ricardo? I mean, wow.
Okay, this is a lot of fun. If you have a look at the phone, look at the time on the phone. 9:10.
9:10.
It's a minute before 9/11.
Yes.
So the way I see this is something big is coming. There's going to be reveals. There's going to be an event, not necessarily a catastrophic event, but something that it might be, but something that's certainly going to grab everybody's attention, like 9/11 did. And so you've got the
Hmm.
pixelated faces, and then they're cleared up. It could be, for example, a
Mm.
lot of bad people are about to be revealed. Not necessarily the faces you see on the screen, but you see
Right, right.
pixelated faces, and now you see the truth. And so potentially, we're a day away, a minute away, very close to away, and everyone's got that feeling, that sense of anticipation that we are close to something big happening. Now, normally, when an announcement is made, it turns out to be a nothing burger, and we've had years of nothing burgers. And so, whenever anybody says to me, it's about to happen, I, I say, yeah, no, it's not going to happen. We're fine. And DJT never telegraphs, but this is different. This is now very different, has a different
Hmm.
quality to it. And
Yes.
I'm expecting certainly something's happening very, very quickly. It's going to be big, and it's going to have to do with a lot of reveals. Now, is it revealing individuals? Is it revealing strategies? Is it revealing? There's so much that could possibly come out. Something big's about to be announced, revealed, and the event will grab everyone's attention. That's the way I'm reading that.
Yeah, it's an interesting analysis, and I think I think you're absolutely right, and it's a ramp up of what we call the Trump comms. He's been rather subtle over the years with Trump comms that the astute Trump observer understands, and then he's gotten less. He's ramped up the gradient of his comms by going central casting 17 17, and now it's really ramped up because this was a blasted series of bizarre little video clips that I just put up on the screen. That's real is really ramping up the messaging, and I think that's a good analysis about 9, 10, and so forth and so on. And it could be good news they're revealing, really good news, like a policy change that we're all waiting for on finances or something, anything, but also a warning because we know if that announcement comes out, the creation of all the newness that we're creating, whether it's QFS or the new money or something, um, we know if we makes that announcement, one would assume we're going to have retaliation from the enemy. So it could be message. We're just speculating, folks. At least I am. It could be messaging of good and or bad news, or good news that leads to potential threats. But what are your thoughts about about that?
Yeah, it could be the larger picture about bad news happening. There's lots of bad things that have to happen, without a doubt. A lot of it is actually the fiction. It's the force and fraud. Thomas Hobbes. War is a combination of force and fraud, and we've said previously, you can pick your
Mhm.
percentage. I say it's about 60% fraud and 40% force. It's probably dropping to 70/30 actually, or even 80/20. The fraud. The more fraud you use, the less force you need. So big things have to occur. And let me give you an example. A lot has to happen before we have reason to celebrate. A lot. There's still a lot to come out. Um,
Mhm.
for example, on a practical sense, we've seen Venezuela and then the Straits of Hormuz and then um, Cuba
Cuba.
and as I described previously, we've got this operational level activity. These are campaigns that form part of a larger strategy, which informs the grand strategy. But these are just operational level actions. Although there are many lines of effort in it. Straits of Hormuz, you've got oil that has an impact on the people. They're now complaining about it. But it's also the stopping of shipping of things other than oil, like illegal gold and
Mhm.
silver, illegal oil, adrenochrome, sex trafficking, you name it. A lot of stuff gets shipped through the Straits of Hormuz, and it just ain't oil. And so that's that one level. Then you've got the control of Iran by the City of London by the British Empire, and they use that as one of their proxies. And then at another level, it's control of the economies of UAE and say Saudi, because a lot of their foreign income from oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz. The flow-on effect to India, China, and Japan in terms of their economy is huge. So there's many implications to it. It's not as simple as it sounds. And the solution, and everyone must remember this, is not simply military, because this war is fought on many, many levels. Military is one. It's the most obvious and it's necessary, but believe it or not, it's actually the least critical, if that makes sense. It's certainly speeds the process up. And so when you can squeeze a trigger or press a button and remove a problem, it's a lot quicker than having to do it other ways. But understand it's the least critical of all of the approaches. And we'll be touching on that today. For example, the economic and financial changes that have taken place over the last maybe 14 months or so. And so then you've got the next one. What's the next one? Well, Taiwan. Taiwan has to be taken out. Why? Well, it's not just the little neighbor that China was denied, where Chiang Kai-shek took his democratic forces and stayed there. Taiwan is another version of Venezuela, is another version of Ukraine. There are bad things that go on there. Now, how do you take out Taiwan? Well, we know that China's under control, so we're going to beat the drum and make it look like China's getting belligerent, and we're going to have this terrible World War III involving China invading Taiwan, which has been planning to do for decades, in a legitimate sense from their communist perspective. But now that we know China's under control, as Goebbels said, you don't try to introduce a new idea into the population, reinforce the existing one. So the people will believe that China wants to invade Taiwan because they want it back. They consider it their part of their homeland. And so instead of trying to persuade people of the opposite, okay, let's beat the China drum, because what's on the news now? World War III, China's going to take over. Recently, China mobilized its fishing fleet. It's basically a naval militia, hundreds and hundreds of fishing vessels, and they organize themselves in a geometric pattern in the Sea of China, very close to Taiwan, through the straits through which 1.5 million vessels travel yearly. And so they interfered with the passage of those vessels, and there are rules of the road or rules of the sea where two vessels approaching each other must obey rules. And for those who don't know, in the Navy, there's always a bit of push and shove. One ship from one country will position itself in a difficult position opposite the ship of another country. These are naval vessels. And the rules of the sea indicate that one must give way. And it's literally this push and shove. And the bully that might be making life difficult for the innocent traveler has to obey the rules of the sea. If they don't, then the bully has the right to open fire, because they can consider that a threat. And so this is what's going on in the Sea of Japan. So these fishing vessels line up in a geometric pattern that was visible from space in a typhoon, and they held the discipline to hold that together, and then they formed a rectangle. And the ships that were traveling in and out, they work on very strict timetables. You just can't sail in and sail out and get transfer your goods and get the job done. There's a very strict timetables, and there are fuel usage rates, timings that must be met. And so it's not as simple as, well, sail around them. Well, no, the implications to the 1.5 million vessels that trade are significant. The commercial penalties would be stiff, and the South China Sea is a major highway, or seaway, I guess, say between South Korea and Japan, two of the largest economies on the planet. So you can see how all these apparently minor issues become real. Now, why is that happening now? My guess, my interpretation is this. We're going to see something coming out of China towards Taiwan, and they might even land on Taiwan, or who knows, boots on the ground in Taiwan in order to prevent that. But the purpose is, understand this, that Taiwan is not the good place you think it is. It's rotten. And a lot of bad things are happening there. It needs to be cleaned out. So a better way to do it than to create the impression that China is the belligerent enemy that it used to be. It's now under control, has been for some time. But then it can still be done, and the world looks back and says, well, there you go. China's done what we always thought it would do. The people get all upset. They get concerned by it. Something is done in Taiwan. It might even be done by their own forces, just like the real Israeli military assets are taking out real Israeli cabal assets, if that makes sense. So it's a game within a game within a game. What is it? Enigma wrapped in a puzzle, wrapped in a riddle. Now, if that seems confusing and unnecessarily complex, it has to be, because if we can work it out, the bad guys can work it out. If the bad guys can work it out, the strategy fails. And so the key part here is to understand that we're supposed to be confused at this point. We're supposed to be off balance. We're supposed to be overwhelmed. It's exactly how it works. It's misdirection. The one thing I can advise everyone to do is, particularly those who have been paying attention over the years, the ones that have got the fuel in the garage, they've got tinned food, They got money in the bank. They can actually hunker down without too much fuss. Relax. This is the moment we've been waiting for. It started. It started very slowly. There might be a bang coming shortly, but sit back, relax, don't respond, don't react, just watch the show. This is intended for those that haven't been paying attention, who have no money in the bank, who live day to day just in time rather than just in case. They're the ones that have to feel the pain and start to panic. That's very real. So there's as usual, John, sorry, mate, but a long answer to a very short question.
Wow. Well, that's fascinating on the Taiwan situation. I've learned a lot here. Just real quick question before I take us into a different territory. How does it end up? Uh, there's a geopolitical shuffle taking place right now with countries and old organizations like NATO and UN and WEF and territories and who's owning what and what's being exposed and neutralized and all of this. What happens to Taiwan if you fast forward, say, a year from now? Is Taiwan, how does it play
Yeah.
out? Is Taiwan controlled by China, or is that optics? Does Taiwan remain its own nation, but it's cleansed out now? Like, where does Taiwan sit in the world a year from now, let's say?
If I had to put a few dollars down, I'd say that Taiwan, after being the center of attention, will remain its own entity because it's a useful entity, and that's the way I see it happening. I could be wrong, but it's
Sure.
consistent with the national security strategy that the US has put out, where nations get to self determination is key. The Taiwanese certainly don't want to come under China. China will be very different in this new world, but nonetheless, they still won't be interested in being under China. Having said that, it might be the best way forward. Either way, and trust this, Donald John Trump will be running the show one way or another. Everyone is taking a knee to him, and the reason is this: he's got everything on his side. He has the military power, the economic power, the financial power. He has everybody by the short and curlies. And that's why
Mhm.
he can make statements recently, say about Iran. You've got X hours to do this, otherwise we start destroying everything. And all of a sudden, Iran decides, oh, we're going to negotiate now. It's all show, folks. It was never a real threat. It was never really going to be counted. It's part of the TV program as it rolls out. But understand that DJT is the richest, most powerful man that ever lived on planet Earth, controls the lot. And the show is designed to get the world into a place where it can actually do what it needs to do, tidy it up, and then we can get back to work. But we're still in this transition phase from where we are to where we need to be. The transition phase will last some time. There'll be some shocking and news grabbing events. There'll be relief, but there's lots to do. But for my money, I think Taiwan will end up staying the independent island nation that we all think it is, but it'll be under different ownership, different control, let's say, as will the other countries around the planet. They're under control. They're doing what they're supposed to do, and competing to be who can be the best world citizen.
Mhm. Well, that's a good game to be playing for a change. What comes to my mind, and I remember when it happened, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago already, it's close to, when the treaty or agreement ended between England and China in terms of the ownership of the island, Hong Kong. And I've been to Hong Kong many times, just as because I used to live in China, believe it or not, for a year, and we used to escape China and take a quick flight to Hong Kong just as tourists. And Hong Kong was quite nice. But I remember when that treaty ended, they took back the supposedly administration aspects of Hong Kong. Of course, they overstepped. I'm talking about the mainland China overstepped their bounds, as one would expect, and pissed off the Hong Kong people. And I'm sure you remember, you and I didn't know each other then, Ricardo, but we remember seeing, a million Hong Kongers on the streets with American flags singing the national anthem. That was a big statement saying, hey, get out of here, China. You're overstepping your bounds. And I bet you Taiwan's thinking about that. Hey, we don't want any level of control from the mainlanders. But that's what just comes to my mind because, yeah, sure. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just very quickly, in case people are wondering about that rundown on Taiwan, here's a bit of history that a lot of people aren't aware of. We've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. The Chinese Communist Revolution in China, 1947, Mao Zedong took over. Now, the American general running things back there before that moment took place was a gentleman called Wiedemeyer. And Wiedemeyer received an instruction from George C. Marshall, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who was a deep state worker for the longest time. And Marshall told him, make sure that Mao Zedong gets half the power there in that country. And Wiedemeyer shot back and said, you're kidding me. Mao Zedong's not a political leader. This guy's a thug. He's not particularly intelligent. He's brutal, but he just happens to be sort of useful for certain power brokers in China. So, and Chiang Kai-shek is our man. He's the Democrat. We should be backing Chiang Kai-shek and not Mao Zedong. And Marshall's response was pretty straightforward. They disarmed Chiang Kai-shek, and he had to break camp quickly and get off to Taiwan to set up a place there. Now, Deep State was happy for Taiwan to exist as a thorn in China's side because they always need to control both sides of the argument. So Chiang Kai-shek was allowed to escape, set up place in Taiwan. Mao Zedong took control because all opposition was taken, and that was by design. And so this Taiwan-China problem is like, I don't know, Israel-Palestine. Like everywhere you go, there's always going to be one against the other. The deep state needs conflict. They need the conflict for profit. They need the conflict for war. They need the conflict to distract the people. And so if people think that the Taiwan-China issue is just one that happened, no, nothing just happens. It was manufactured by deep state operatives in the US. And if people are offended by me saying George C. Marshall was a deep state operative, you'll be shocked, because you'll also find out that FDR and his cabinet was absolutely penetrated by communists. So this is part of the history that's going to come out. It's going to shock a lot of people. And it's hard. It's just tough because everyone but everyone who was in any position of power, real power, was controlled. They were never their own individual. They were never their own men. They were never working for the cause that they were purportedly working for. So again, that's just a snippet of information to understand that the global history is not what we think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm learning a lot listening to you in this segment. And what comes to my mind, of course, are those that challenge that narrative. And like JFK, we know what happened to him, or like Donald J. Trump, who they threw everything in the kitchen sink at him for the last 10 years. Those that go up against the unwillingness to be a deep state operative, as you've just defined. I want to switch gears and talk about another power source on this planet known as money. Let's go to image number 8. Okay, can you put this on a full screen for me? If not, anyway, this is an official document, U.S. Department, thank you, Department of Treasury, announced President Donald J. Trump's signature to appear on future U.S. paper currency. That's our money. So on the money, we're going to have President Donald J. Trump's signature. Now, as I understand, this is the first time a sitting president has had that take place. In other words, it's happened in the past after the president left office. So this is March 26th. You know, it's just pretty current here. A couple days ago, Treasury Public Affairs press release, treasury.gov. You see it on the screen. Go look it up. Treasury announces President Donald J. Trump's signature to appear on future U.S. paper currency, leading the highlight along with the Secretary of Treasury. Oh, that's nice. Making the first time in history, there it is, for a sitting president on our newly forming currency. Next image, please. On a 3-panel. Next image. Thank you. Breaking news. I think this was posted by Benny Johnson, I think his name is. Breaking news. President Trump signs an executive order to immediately pay TSA. That wasn't what I wanted. That's my error. But anyway, next image. Actually, hold off right there. Go back. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. Signature. This is what we can expect. There's Donald Trump's signature, which I have an original signature of the president in his book, Art of the Deal. But yeah, that'll be on the money. And I'll tell you, that is a wonderful, wonderful thing Let's go to the next image. I'm not sure what it is. We may pedal back. Yeah, let's pedal back. Okay, keep that on the screen. Ricardo, what are your views about this? This is pretty sweeping. We go back to the beginning of the broadcast where we showed these bizarre short cuts released to the public, those images, pixelated images and such. Now, again, we don't know exactly what that's leading to, but at the very same time, we're talking about a currency shift or a president's signature on it. It's pretty extraordinary. What do you make of this?
Well, there's two ways to look at it, John. First of all, is that the optics of it. What does it mean? And optics are important. They're not substantial, but they are critical to make a point, I guess. It's the first time the U.S. Secretary of Treasury since whatever it was, 1861 or whatever, hasn't had his signature on the money. Now, why would the Treasury Secretary have his signature or her signature rather than the President? Well, organizationally, the power has been delegated to the Treasury Secretary to do things with the Treasury, and those powers remain. Minting coins, printing dollars, and the rest of it. So maybe it's just a delegation issue. Maybe the power has actually now been transferred to DJT, which is a very practical way of saying, guess who's running the show?
Correct.
The Treasury Secretary is no longer, although Besant still has that power, the fact that the signatures there is critical because it's issued under his name. Secondly, Besant did actually say, and I've been reading this morning, I've got a hat tip to the author of these notes that I've made. Let me just get the name because he posts on X and he's put up a superlative summary on X, the debriefing 17, at the debriefing 17. So go to X, please check out his post called "They're Changing Your Money," and he gives an excellent rundown on it. But he actually highlights the fact that Besant has mentioned these three words in the Monetary Act, and he said it a couple of times, to ensure lasting dollar dominance. Dollar dominance. And DJT and his signature on that is a message to the world. You will be working under the US dollar, the new US dollar, and we control it. And so it's a very public statement saying, yeah, the world's changing, and we will be calling the shots for some time to come.
Fascinating. And, let's put up the image of Juan 07. I'm giving a direct quote from Juan dated back June 2025, where he stated, quote, "In all these things we're going to have to fight in this reset of America, the war in the financial realm is going to be the greatest of them all," Juan 07. And so that dovetails perfectly with your analysis just a moment ago. That brings me to the bonds. I'm bringing Juan 07 to our audience on this coming Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern live on my Global Financial Reset show, probably for an hour or so. I've also got Bill Armour of Genesis Gold to weigh in on the silver and gold issue at the end. But Juan's going to unpack a lot, and he's very concerned about the bond issue escalating now, as he forecasted a couple of years ago, which I did a show with him on that. And he's now making his way around in the new media circuit, if you will, and I'll have him Wednesday to discuss this. Jamie Dimon also on the record saying this collapse, we're talking about the bonds, folks, is going to be, tower any collapse in any markets we've ever had. And so while neither you nor I, Ricardo, are economic experts, be curious to get your opinion. You've got these strange images coming out of the White House. We can feel it, especially those of us in 4 and 5D. We can feel what's going on. The optics are out there. We've got this issuing of a new currency, really, is what's happening. And those that have been following it, we understand that the QFS system's been tested. That's why we've had various glitches over periods of time. It is ready to go and ready to serve, but we're not. We, the people, by and large, the world is not yet in there functioning. But you can hear them drums beating. And with the bond collapse taking place at the same time, and that quote I just gave from Juan 07, I think, in part, just one man's simple opinion, what we're about to see unfold throughout the course of April and beyond, some of it, among many other issues, is going to be economic related. What are your views?
Well, that's it. The economic war is a great way to fight the war. So look, wars are messy. Ammunition, storage, ships, planes, soldiers, sad parents. You're just better off buying the place like China did to Australia. It's just so much easier. But specifically about the bonds, what and there's a couple of parallel paths here. Either the US is in its deficit is just in the trillions. The bonds won't be payable because there's nothing to pay them with, and there's going to be a massive collapse, and there's a problem.
Hmm.
Or the US deficit doesn't exist because it was the deficit of a bankrupt corporation that's been written off. There is now a sovereign nation running the show. There's a republic running the show, but there's the image of the corporation. And is that debt real? Yeah. Owed by whom to whom? If you've got a problem, go see the bankrupt corporation's the short answer. And then the other part is the deficit of the United States, or the states of America, as they're called, the states of America. Is the deficit what it is? Well, maybe, maybe not. Let's say there is a deficit. And there's another point that at Debriefing 17 made was that I think it's 8,100 tons of gold that the US allegedly has, and I think it's more than that. I think it's significantly more than that.
Mhm.
But the 81 tons of gold is priced at $42.22 an ounce. This is just an accounting decision made by
Right.
the people that are holding onto the gold. If it goes to market prices now of about, I don't know, what is it, 3,000, no more than that now, 3,000 an ounce.
4,500 an ounce. Yeah,
There
4,500.
you go. It's even jumped since this was written. So you've got 81 tons, 8,100 tons of gold at 4,500 an ounce. Wow. We'll put it this way, at 3,100 an ounce, that's 800 billion. So bang. The bank balance is now $800 billion better. But if it jumps up to, I don't know, what is it, $20,000 an ounce? That might be a number that somebody plucked. That should be repriced. That
Mhm.
all of a sudden, if that deficit exists, and I'm not suggesting it does, but if it does, guess what? The deficit's looking a whole lot less. And so the actual strength of the US economy, not the bankrupted corporation, but the actual republic is looking pretty sound. So even if it has to pad on the
Mhm.
bonds, even if it does, and I'm not saying it should or shouldn't, it's in great shape to do so. It doesn't need to issue bonds anymore, but it's in great shape. And so there's these two parallel messages, or two parallel lines. Both are worthy of discussion, but you've always, when discussing one, you've got to understand the other one is right alongside it, and it impacts upon the other. Straddling these two lines of operation, let's say, one real, one fictitious, but both equally important. So I wouldn't be worried about the US economy. I'm not worried about bonds. I'm not worrying about the collapse of the US, because if there's one thing that won't collapse, it's the US economy. It'll go stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yes, the new economy, the new currency, backed by commodities, gold, sovereign wealth fund, and so forth. As to your point a moment ago, analyzing the signatures and the cent being on there, moving it to the Treasury, of which Donald Trump is the commander in chief and the president of the over the executive branch, which controls the Treasury. So yeah, it's fascinating. So 40,000 foot view, folks. I'm going to go back and read Juan's quote and then provide a statement. Again, Juan says, in all these things, we're going to have to fight. In this reset of America, the war in the financial realm is going to be the greatest of them all. That's a big statement. And so we see the Straits of Hormuz, which you spoke about, moving goods and oil and all that. Oil is money, right? I mean, so you've got the oil issue front and center. Now we've got Trump's signature coming on some new money, plenty of talk of the QFS, talk of a bond, and quite frankly, stock and real estate collapse as well. Most people are in the camp that that's going to occur. So, big stuff taking place. I have a feeling part of those mixed images from these strange messages from the White House while they're going to probably lead to lots of other unrelated economic things, I think the economy is being signaled here as well, just in my humble opinion. Um, but we'll see what happens. Um, let's put up the images to my producer of General Holt and Captain Peter Mattisou. This will remind me my other broadcast, Eyes on Gitmo, that we host once a month. These are two staples, Juan O'Savin Frequence, Matt Mech Frequence, and other guests, all military and intelligence. And the reason I'm bringing this up, Colonel Bosi, is I'm leading to the, I know we've talked about this before, but it's on the minds of everyone again, and that's the EAS, Emergency Alert System, or the Emergency Broadcast System. Now, retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt and retired Captain Pete Mattisou were on the record a week or so ago when we published the broadcast, and many others stating, I asked the question, will there be an EBS? And if so, how and what way will it be deployed? Because it can serve in a lot of different ways, especially since we are in a time of war. So having laid that down, let's go back to Ricardo and I. Colonel Bosi, what are your views? And again, I know we've beaten it to a pulp, but this messaging from the White House to me also may be an indicator that this EBS or EAS may be relatively imminent. Relatively imminent to me, sometime between April and June. What is your take about EBS? Is it an if or is it a when? And in what ways can it be used? In what ways do you think it might be utilized?
Well, it's already being used now because we've been told in Australia there's an emergency broadcast system being tested because we need to test it and it'll be done sometime in the next month or two. And the first piece of feedback that I'm certainly getting is, why aren't people asking the question why? Once again, the people are just sitting back docile and credulous and saying, okay, but you've got to ask yourself the question, why would we need an EBS? And ask the politicians, why? Why do we have to have an EBS? But nobody seems to be asking that very obvious question. So there's immediate piece of feedback in terms of how's the population going. Well, they're still asleep and they still believe everything they're being told. So there's the first piece of feedback. If and when is it going to be used? I believe it will be. Why? It's part of the. I think it'll be part of the scare event. It's going to generate a lot of fear and uncertainty, which is necessary, unfortunately. But it's necessary in order to get people's attention, to say this is real, this is serious. And in one sense it is, in one sense it isn't. But it's seriously going to impact upon them because it won't be an EBS because there's World War III, although that might be the story. It won't be an EBS because the ETs have landed, although that might be the story. But they certainly need to get people's attention and bring them under control as the truth starts to come out. Because when the truth does come out, then you're really going to get the people's attention. So it's an interesting one. I think it's a question of when, if. But again, it's just be ready, folks. Be calm. Watch what's going on. Those of you who are prepared, you're in great shape. Those that aren't, they won't be in great shape at all. They're going to be in a very bad way.
Yes, thank you. And real quick, because I'm always action oriented, when we focus on a danger and a warning, uh, I have a site. It's free, wealthcoachuniversity.com. I have 10 recorded video modules. I don't recall which module. One is titled and on preparedness, and it gives people a lot of things at various levels with which they can prepare for potential events. So I would encourage everyone to visit that and watch that to prepare. But, I'm going to take us into territory. Again, a lot of what's prompted the direction of this broadcast, sir, is those messages from the White House. I find very, very interesting because it has really ramped up the calm level. I mean, by putting that stuff out, they put the first one out, and I'm watching people on social media and talking to some folks I know, and they're like, well, sure looks like someone hacked the White House. I said, there's no hacking at this stage of the game of the White House's cell phones to put that kind of stuff out, and especially several different messages as we've seen. And of course, that narrative is now in the toilet. But what I'm getting at is, and I'm not saying that JFK Jr. Uh, is related to this messaging. Again, who knows? I don't feel that that's the situation, but it's coming to my mind, JFK Jr. And I know that is a highly controversial and conspiratorial subject, but you're one known not to be fearful of taking on anything. So let's tiptoe around Let's put up the image of JFK Jr. There it is. Okay. Question mark following the birth of JFK Jr. is what we're addressing here. I want to fill in few little blanks for our audience of my experience regarding JFK Jr., and then very importantly, have Ricardo Bosi weigh in. We all remember the great Robert David Steele. Now, yeah, he had a bit of an attitude here and there and pissed some people off. I get it. But he was a great warrior. And, if you resurface Robert David Steele's video clips, they serve such a great purpose right now. I fortunately had opportunity to meet him and know him, and we've interviewed each other and so forth. But he said, and this is important, folks, as it relates to JFK Jr., and I sure wish I had all his episodes saved, because I remember this very specifically. It was so not Robert David Steele on camera. He had a specific persona on camera. He went, you remember, folks, looked like a basement in his home. He had a little fireplace in the back and a whole lot of books and things all over the place. And he would sit down there and teach us what's going on in the world behind the scenes. And what he said, all of a sudden he did something unlike the other Robert David Steele presentations. He came on, and it was only 3 minutes long, as I recall, something short and sweet, just him, no guests, no interviews, and a very calm, poised, sort of elated character. And he said, I just met Juan O'Savin. Now, this is many years ago when Juan didn't make himself as publicly accessible as he has since. But I'm sorry I'm being long-winded, but Robert David Steele, I'm the only one who can tell this story. Well, the only one who is telling it, I should say. And he came on, Steele, and said, I just had a wonderful steak dinner with Juan O'Savin. And he went on to say a few things, and you could tell he was in a different space. And he said, and I'm happy to report to you that JFK Jr. is in fact alive. Now that's a strong paraphrase, borderlining a direct quote. That's Robert David Steele. So let's tuck that away. The next thing, and I'll be brief with the rest, and we'll turn it over to Colonel Bosi. I spoke with, and this name, sometimes you reveal names and sometimes you don't. And I know when to and when not to. This is a not to moment. But I spoke with a gentleman who served in the NSA, served in government when Flynn was in intelligence. And this gentleman said, this was a year ago, something like that. We had a lengthy discussion on the phone about Junior. This gentleman took the complete opposites view, that Junior was dead. Took it so far to the point where he said to me, I'll give you the phone number of the SEAL who brought his body up from under the ocean. Now, I didn't take the phone number because I feel I was going down a whole lot of other rabbit holes. You don't know who you're talking to, or what's this information, what role's being played, and I just took a pass on it. But that's a noteworthy point that contradicts Robert David Steele. This brings us to the lovely and talented Rachel Right-Side Blonde. And if you don't know who Rachel Right-Side Blonde is, go to presumably YouTube and Rumble and go look her up. I interviewed her in Conversations of Consequence, I believe it was, or some platform. And I've met Rachel, formerly with the New George magazine. And she has done extensive research and connected so many bizarre anomalies and dots on the subject of the gentleman we see on the screen here, our American prince, our JFK Jr. So we tuck away Rachel Right-Side Blonde. Then you have, I was at a dinner. I'm sorry I'm being long winded. I was at a dinner in Tennessee when I was actively on the road with the Clay Clark tours and such. And at this round table in a private steakhouse room, to the left of me was Charlie Ward. To the right, or I don't know, Charlie, not Charlie, Charlie Ward. To the right of me was Wano Savin. And Dr. Kirk Elliott was there, economist, some staff with me, and I forget the gentleman's name, the founder of PPN. That gentleman was there, a great guy, and some other folks I didn't know. And I figured, well, I'm here, let me ask. I asked Charlie, and of course, everybody knows Charlie's stand on JFK Jr., that being, of course, that he's very much alive. And then I asked Juan. Now, I asked Juan sort of in a hush, not for the whole table. I said, Juan, we've discussed it before, but is Junior alive? And of course, there's a no answer that becomes your answer. And that was my answer, if you follow me, folks. And so one last thing is Scott McKay, Patriot Street Fighter Scott McKay, good friend of mine. It's going on 6 years. We have a lot of history together. Scott McKay has some very specific information of actually speaking to Scott's knowledge to JFK Jr. himself under another handle that he has out there. And then I have one last thing, an interesting story. I'm not quite sure I'm privy to tell right now, but is 107 JFK Jr.? The answer is no. Okay. But is there and has there been some interactions between Juan and Junior in various different ways since their younger days together on Martha's Vineyard till today? Yes. And I'll leave it there. Now, I just took a lot of the airways, which I normally don't do this much, but I did this because I want to lay some other people's views that I alluded to, especially Robert David Steele, coming out almost in like a angelic moment, going, feeling such relief that Junior's alive, coming off the heels of a dinner with 107. So I throw all that at the dartboard, throw that all up on the marker board, and have you now, sir, weigh in. I know you've done this before, but we're getting pretty far advanced towards the finish line of this great war. And JFK Jr. has not surfaced yet. And I think if he is alive, and if anyone wants to know what I believe, I think he is. And do I think he's going to show up as a result of these recent comms? No, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I threw a lot out there. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, what's your position and view, if you're willing to put that on record, this advanced in the game? What's your stand on JFK Jr.?
Well, let me open with that line I used during the pre-show talk, John. I think JFK Jr. is a nice young man with a good future ahead of him. Having said that, I spoke to Scott McKay as well during an interview, and he was referring to Ayn Rand's book Atlas Shrugged. And in the book, for those of you who read it, and I won't spoil it for those that haven't, but key people, good people, productive people, started disappearing. And he said, "Have you read the book?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "What do you think about people like JFK Jr. and I don't know, others?" And the penny dropped, and I went, "What a great strategy that would be. Wouldn't it be a great strategy to pull people out for sometimes pressing reasons like threat to their lives, fake their death, take them away, takes them off the radar, and other reasons that people might need to be used in the future? Because this is we're playing the long game, very, very long game. It's not like somebody decided, hey, we need somebody to take over after Trump goes." No, this was some time ago. And that question then raises itself. Who's going to take over after Trump? Because Trump eventually has to go one way or another. Now, at exactly the same time, just recently, I believe DJT said, he used the words, "Well, we've been at this 9 years now, and 11 days from now, this will come to an end." And it's sad because we've been at this for 9 years, and 11 days from now, it'll come to an end. 9/11, the time on the phone, 9/10, right? Okay. Yeah. So are they saying that something's going to transition from one to another in the short term or in the long term? Maybe. Just leave that hanging out there because this is all speculative. But then the
Sure.
real question does arise: who's going to take over from Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump, he can't be the king forever. The reins
Correct.
have to be passed over to somebody else. So who is that somebody? Um, and it's not just an American problem; it's a global problem. Who's going to take over the British Empire?
Yep.
Think about it. These are the big players. You need
Yes,
names
they
that
are the
have
biggest
presence, that
players.
have weight, that have heft. There you go. That have heft that the people know and love. And Scott said that, oh, yeah, JFK Jr. That'll stop the world, and I went, well, it'll stop the US because to the rest of the world, JFK Jr.'s are nice but not relevant. I said, but Queen Di turning up, that'd do something for the British Empire. They give you that transitional
Mhm.
figure from where the Brits are to where they need to be, where the Commonwealth is where it needs to be, like the Shah of Iran. He's the son of Reza Shah that was deposed by the Ayatollah. So we've got his son coming in now. Who wants a Shah to come in? Nobody. But you need a transitional figure for Iran that people can put their trust into and say, okay, well, this is necessary for the time being, but we're going to move to something, I don't know, constitutional republic down the track once we've got our ducks in a row. The British Empire, the Commonwealth, Queen Di, what a magnificent transitional figure she would be in terms of helping the Commonwealth move from where it is to where it needs to be. So who's going to face Donald Trump? Who's going to replace Donald Trump? Well, you need someone with a name. Name recognition is almost everything. Secondly, you need someone who's been in the game and has track record. And so when they start mentioning people like Rubio and others, that's the obvious throwaway line to distract people. But if the stories are true, then JFK Jr. has been involved in this intimately from the get-go. He knows he's been pulling levers, he's been doing his bit. So it's not like he's been sitting on the yacht for the last many, many years waiting for his time in the sun. He's been part of this game for a long time, and he would have played a key role. So the actual transition makes sense. So not only do you have a name, you've got a guy that's been involved in this, which can be revealed subsequently. Nobody knows that yet for sure. But then down the track, up he pops, and who's the obvious successor? The JFK Jr. is the name that Americans would accept as a successor to Trump, and all the other names I've thrown up will pale into insignificance in reality because they don't have the brand recognition like JFK Jr. does, and they will not have had the in-depth work on the system within Q and all the rest of it that JFK Jr. I suspect will be revealed to have had. And so you've got that transitional character who can take the US into the future for the next few terms, however long that might be. And so when you put all those pieces together, I'm quite happy to say it publicly. I think JFK's alive. He's been busy working with Q, pulling it all together. He's the obvious choice to replace Trump, and every plan has to have a succession plan. And don't think that the White Hats don't have a very good succession plan, and it does not involve a bunch of politicians who were previously deadbeats and dirtbags who have been rehabilitated courtesy of some fantastic political communications from DJT and his team. They'll drop by and up you come with some genuinely attractive, credible, trustworthy leaders to then transition these nations from where they are to where they need to be. And understand this is a global issue. Every country needs their trusted individual to take them through, not forever. Because again, the national security strategy that DJT has put up is very clear. These countries have to run themselves. Nobody in the US is interested in running the planet in that sense. The people have to get there. Downside, most of the planet's incapable of running their own country. Even some of the countries that should be able to, like Oz, we should be able to, but we can't. Why? You heard me say it before. 27 million people, 17 million, 10 million kids, get rid of that, 17 million others, and only 2 of that 17 million are not Masons or controlled by Masons. And so are we capable of doing it? Absolutely not. So we're going to need help. There's this transitional period, and this is where martial law or military government comes in. And there's difference. Military government is in a foreign country, and martial law is when your own troops are running the show in your own country. And so there's a lot of moving parts to be dealt with. But in that sweep of the next phase of the operation, you can see what's required: recognizable, trusted leadership, a strong military to underpin that transition, and then progressively, when different nations at different points in time have charted a path to the future, have demonstrated the ability to do so by meeting milestones in terms of their own governance, then maybe we'll start getting to a point where the nations can actually start achieving what DJT outlined in his national security strategy, where they start running themselves with greater autonomy and become their own sovereign nations once again.
Fascinating. A lot of things ran through my mind listening to your analysis, and of course some of it theoretical. We haven't seen Junior, but I'm glad you've laid that down on the record. A few things I want to comment on and get your feedback. Um, where do I begin? I've always thought of these words have been crossing through my minds for some years now. Life beyond Trump. Now you've taken that to the next level in game theory or war gaming this out. Who can fill his boots? Answer, as you stated, it's not uh, the Rubio Vance floating thing is the political thing to send everybody over here and keep things status quo. First off, I'll put this on the record. I'm not quite sure who JD Vance really is. I have theories about that situation because the homework that was done immediately the day that name, I never heard of JD Vance. And all of a sudden, we're all thinking, what stellar name is Trump going to have as his VP? And he comes up with who? So, by design, digital soldiers get out there, do some homework, and find out this guy's might not be so good. So, we're in a game of what? CGI, masks, replacements, clones, all kinds of stuff. That's where I stand on JD Vance. As far as Marco Rubio goes, he seems to be doing a stellar great job and good. So he's a fantastic Secretary of State, and he's serving under the Commander in Chief, doing a great job right now. I see that, and he's got a big role to play with Cuba. These are not the players which you were alluding to that could ever fill President Trump's boots for the world that we're reconstructing right now. So to me, if Junior's alive, that's the only one who can fill those boots. In fact, probably equally, if not greater. The only one who can take that torch on the Western Hemisphere and make all the work that this administration now is doing stick and carry it forward. And to your great analysis and point about Princess Diana, you have is another one that I also believe is alive. Again, I say these things. I don't want to be thrown in some ultra conspiracy world. But you know what, folks? Most of the conspiracy theories of yesterday are now proving to be the conspiracy facts and realities of today. And it reminds me of, and so to your point, Ricardo, about JFK Jr. filling the boots in this side of the world, Princess Diana taking care of the other superpower, the UK. That keeps the plan intact, the golden age, the restructuring of the world, so we can carry forward what we've been working on for 10 years. It doesn't die. You're not going to have a J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio fill those boots. It's just not going to happen, in my humble opinion. And it leads me to Pascal Najadi. And we're not going to spend a lot of time there. I haven't seen anything from Pascal as of the last couple of short years where he blasted on the scene, had me at hello, and then lost me later on. Spoke with him on the phone once. I'm speaking to someone now who is in touch with him. And, but, he went off into areas that I just don't subscribe to and can't quite figure out. But he did speak about Princess Diana serving, and of course JFK Jr. So I'm just rambling here, but you unpacked an interesting analysis, and these are the things that are coming to my mind. And one last thing, and then I'll turn the airwaves back over to you, is you think, let's just have fun for a moment, folks, because Ricardo and I always take the news on Bosi Briefs, the news issues of the week, and then comment on that, and we give concrete blah, blah, blah. And then, but it's also interesting to speculate a bit here. And so I'll take it one step further. If Junior fills the boots of, well, before he fills the boots of President Donald Trump, we have Trump now, and we've seen bills floating before Congress. I've been talking to people like Juan and others. Look, let's be realistic. He had 4 years stolen from him. Never mind the first 4 years, which they disrupted, but the 4 years of the actual stolen official seat. And so let's just hypothetically say, and Trump, yes, I know he's turning 80 in June. I get it. I know he eats McDonald's and KFC. We've seen it on the plane. We also know he only gets 4 hours sleep. We also know that he has a clean bill of health every year. And we also wonder who he is and what he is. But having stated that, let's say Trump goes another 3 or 4 years and oversees some of the transition. So you've got that time. Then you've got Junior. You've got that time. JFK Jr. is, I think, 2 or 3, 4, 5 years younger, just a couple of years, 2 years younger than me, I believe. I think he would be 65 today. I don't know. Yes, born in 60, 65. I'm 67. So you got a few more years of Trump to finish us off. You got Junior to come in and take over, and he's younger, and he'll be around for a while. We don't know what kind of government, structures we'll have, but let's say you've got 8 years of Junior. By that period of time, Barron Trump's not such a young man anymore. And here's a brilliant guy. So what I'm saying is the succession. You've got some years potentially of Trump. You've got many years of Junior. You've got a Barron Trump who's now pushing 30 or 30 something. I don't know. I think we got enough power here to keep this golden age intact. And then you got Princess Diana. We're just having fun here, folks. Any quick comments, Ricardo, before I close this out with a discussion about your country, Australia?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head when you're looking ahead to you're doing the timeline, and you said, okay, you've got Trump, then you've got so a few years there, then you've got a couple of years with JFK Jr. and then somebody after. That's exactly how you've got to watch it. You've got to have, and you've got multiple options because accidents happen. So you need a number of players that could potentially step up in the military. The seniority in any organization is well established. So when the boss goes down, you don't even think you know who the number 2, number 3, number 4 is. It just happens very, very quickly. Now, having said that, it's not just having having the successor, but the successor has to, as I said, it's got to have the credibility with the people, but then have the ability to continue this work, because the last thing you want is someone in there who's going to drop the ball and then fail decades of work by tens of thousands of people to keep this narrative alive and working. And so you need to be absolutely guaranteed of their reliability. And reliability sounds like a pretty average word. You want a reliable, steering wheel on a car. Well, so believe it or not, reliability is a massively important quality. In special ops, every day is selection course. Just because you've done the selection course to get into whatever special operations unit you are in, what they don't tell you is every day after that, every day you're with a unit, you're still under assessment. Because the moment you become unreliable, it might be just a bad day, and that's forgivable. But if the signs are there that you're not reliable in the long term, then you're going to lose support very quickly, and you'll just drop off the radar. And that's critical, not just for special ops, but in high risk situations, whether it's business, the military, politics, you name it, doesn't matter. Where that continuity is critical, reliability becomes indispensable. It really is. And so whoever you get after JFK Jr. has to have that absolute reliability, proven over time, and then still have enough runway to know that they can do it. Because some people are great, but they're getting old and tired, and they might just lose their edge, and they looked good yesterday, but they don't look so good today, and they might have good reason not to look good. But that doesn't matter. You need someone who's utterly reliable, who can continue to do the work that's been, as I said, decades of work, tens of thousands of people to bring us to this moment. And that doesn't even include the many tens of thousands that have died in the process. And so this is an extremely high risk issue to be dealt with in terms of succession planning after DJT. And so you're on the money. Now, whether it's Barron Trump or not, who knows? He's got the brand value. Does anybody know what his capabilities are? Well, allegedly he's super bright, and that's nice. But he's got to be able to deliver. He's got to be able to appeal to the people. He's got to be able to both be appealing as well as effective in a real sense. Otherwise, it's just a puppet. And the last thing the world needs any more of are puppets. Yes, you have advisors. Yes, you have people behind the scenes doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But if anybody thinks that DJT is somebody's puppet, forget it. That man,
Yeah.
that man is running the show. He needs to understand exactly what's going on and why. And I bet you he sometimes gets a little bit cranky when things don't go according to plan. And the old "you're fired" is got that locked and loaded, ready to go. So there you go.
Thank you. We failed to comb over Don Jr., Eric Trump, and I'll invoke Laura Trump. Why wouldn't one of these three? They're older. They run the Trump business empire. They're politically involved. They've had their lives threatened and their lives completely disrupted. They're certainly paid the price. And but in my humble opinion, Don and I met Don Jr. once or twice. Not like I have any special access. It was just had the opportunity to see him and talk with him briefly, and um, and we see the role he plays with his style and personality. I'll go out on a limb and say Don Jr. is not presidential material, but doing a great job for us. I would go out on a limb and say Eric Trump, out of the two boys, might be more uh, of a possibility, but I see him running the Trump empire. I don't see him as a president. And Laura Trump, who does great work, same thing. So, I isolated Barron. I have a feeling he's the one down the line. Again, this is all just speculation. Any quick comments from you, Ricardo, before we close out our show with Australia?
Yeah, on the Trump family, it's funny. You went to war because you didn't want a hereditary monarch running the show, and yet Americans love their royalty.
That's
It's
pretty
I
funny.
find it sweet. It's actually quite sweet, actually. So I'm not a big fan of hereditary titles. I'm not big fans of um, the offspring of leaders taking over the job unless they can really prove their worth. But having said that, again, there are more issues at stake than simple effectiveness. That brand value is key. Now, of the three, for what it's worth, Don Jr. and Eric and Laura. Uh,
Laura.
Laura Trump, there's your first female president right there. I think she is just extraordinary. It's just a personal opinion. I think she's got a ton of runway ahead of her. I think she's got untapped abilities. She'd be brilliant as somebody's vice president, or I don't know, RFK Jr., JFK Jr.,
Mhm.
uh, and then potentially after time as a VP. If I was playing that particular game, as I said, I'm not a big fan of hereditary families taking over anything except the family business. But she's got, yeah, of the three, there's something about her. I think there's something very special. She's got tremendous potential. She could be your first female president, and wow, she'd do
Yeah.
a devastatingly good job, particularly after having, say, 8 years under JFK Jr. Because this is a long process, folks. This isn't going to knock over in or 2 or 3 election cycles. A lot of work to be done.
Hmm.
Not because not because the Trump hasn't set up what's got to be done. DJT's done his job. It's going to take a while for the people to rise with the occasion, as Abraham Lincoln said. As the situation rises, we must rise with the occasion, not to the occasion,
Hmm.
with the occasion. And that's exactly what the American people have to do, because a big chunk of America ready to go. Big chunk of America, long way from home. Australia, nobody's there. We got a long way ahead of us to rise with the occasion to get to that point. You're well ahead of us, and you'll get there way first. But it's this the point I'm making is this is going to take time. It will take, as I said, it's not just a couple of election cycles. This is a critical moment in history. This is unique in the history of the planet. And getting this right will predicate 1,000 years of peace before the bad guys can really get their claws back into the planet. And that's why it is so critical we do this carefully, we do it in a measured way, we do it with the right people at the right time. And we're going to have to accept challenges to our underlying beliefs to get to where we need to be. And I won't explain what I mean by that right now. But what we believe to be true in terms of how we move ahead, how we'd like to move ahead, how we think we have the right to move ahead, they will be profoundly challenged over the next little while, and we're all going to have to suck it up and realize we're in such such dire straits globally that we're going to have to just follow orders for a bit, so to speak, until we are actually able to then start taking care of ourselves. And the analogy, and I'll finish with this, the analogy I've used before is you're in a siege hostage situation, the terrorists are controlling you, the lads come through the door, and the first thing you'll hear is everyone lie down, right? And if you don't lie down, you'll get shot, because the only ones that will be standing up will be the terrorists. All the hostages want to do the right thing. So everyone lies down. For that period, that will keep you alive. Now, extend that over some years, because the planet is in a siege hostage situation, and we have been forever. We don't know it. So we're going to need that military to come in, tell everyone to lie down. Everyone lies down whether you think you've got the right to do what you want to. You can do that. It's not going to end well for you. If you remember the Israeli raid on Entebbe airport, where they rescued the passengers on an Israeli jet that was taken by terrorists, landed in Uganda. Idi Amin gave them the airport to stay in. The Israeli counterterrorism team came up with a very innovative solution. They burst in, and one of the few casualties was one of the hostages. And when they burst in and said, lie down, this woman stood up and started yelling and screaming. And unfortunately, she was shot. But that's what a recovery is like. Now, we're going to be in a situation where many of us will be challenged quite profoundly at what we think is our right to do and say. And we're just going to have to wait, because we are in a siege hostage situation. The military will be coming in, and the military will be cleaning things up, because there will be the remnants of the filth out there, the Masonic filth and others, that need to be cleaned up. And then we have to be given a safe place in which to learn how to live a better life. But that's for the future.
Yes, well, the future's coming pretty soon, and a lot's going to happen between now and July. So heed the call, folks. One pedal back real quick, and then we'll close out with Australia. Laura Trump, I agree. Out of the three, Don Jr., Eric, and Laura, she, if you look at her trajectory, you know, over these 10 years since President Trump came down the escalator, what has her role been, as I see it, from a 40,000-foot view? She's the one that ran the Promises Made, Promises Kept campaign back in the. She's the one that helped run the campaigns and the rallies. She had a big, strong public presence throughout that period of time. Then she became a guest on the media. I mean, this has been how, 12 years ago, nobody ever heard of Laura Trump, right? So this is now she's a household name the world over. So this was the trajectory. Then she becomes what, a popular show host today. And to your point, she's brilliant. She's sharp. She knows the stuff. She's tough. And I'd rather have her blonde hair in the White House than the witches. And I do believe she is very, very much slated for a seat in government. I see that this is the resume building towards it. Let's talk about your country, Australia. I don't know a whole lot, but I will say this, and I hope I don't upset anybody. I can certainly poke a million holes in my country. What a mess we are. But I will say this, from what I see in the social media space, if I had to summarize, I see, broadly speaking, two broad categories. Basically, some people that just don't seem to give a shit at all. I'm talking about the Australian population. They just,
Yep.
okay, and that's that. So you've got that to deal with. The other thing I see are people that are very much awake, very furious to the point of wanting to take action and desperately looking for help. And that leads me to this question. President Trump, we see what he's doing in Iran. We see the people of Iran praising the president, dancing in the streets in LA, the Iranians that are here. We see we see the Cubans doing that, certainly very soon. In our Global Defense War panel to our audience, where you want to see that show where we fill in a lot of the other blanks that Ricardo and I did not get to here, where of Cuba being a territory of the U.S., kind of unofficially now, soon to be official. We hear about Greenland, we hear about Canada. What about Australia? I know the people that are awake in Australia that look to you for your incredible leadership, but we all need help sometimes. And and so talk to me and our audience and our viewers right now about anything you want about the sentiment of the people in your country, what's going on, what are the problems, and more importantly, closing out with to what degree, Trump's talked about building a Trump Tower, the biggest, tower you'll have. I find that symbolic. Uh, what's going on? What do you see potentially in Colonel Bosi's crystal ball of our relationship, America and Australia? Will there be more unity? Will we come in and clean up the slop and get your country in shape the way we're doing in other countries right now? What's happening, sir? What do you see happening?
Yeah, what's happening is that the obvious deficiencies of our political system, let's focus on that, are now coming to the fore. People are looking at the news and just shaking their head in disbelief at the stupidity, and some of them still don't know they're actors. They think they're the real people, like Anthony Albanese, our alleged prime minister. He's 2.0. We know he's not really the guy. But they're starting to wake up. To their credit, finally, slowly, they're starting to get angry. And that's a good thing, because up until now, it's been a small band of warriors trying to fight a war, persuading people there's an enemy when they can't see them. Most Australians, unfortunately, are like the dodos on the island of Mauritius. You know, the Portuguese sailors arrived. The dodos couldn't spot a natural predator because they hadn't seen one before, much like Australia. We've been allowed to live a peaceful life. We don't know what a threat looks like. And so the Portuguese sailors lopped off the dodos' heads and ate them into extinction. And that's Australia. The second part is the Masonic filth, as I've said before. They run this country. This place was set up as a Masonic fortress
Hmm.
for the future. And so people are afraid they're either under direct control or under the influence of the Masons that run this joint. There's not one part of Australia that's not run by Masons. Nothing. Nothing is run
Wow.
not by Masons. And then you've got the remainder of the population who are just good people trying to do the right thing, but they've been jabbed and brainwashed and poisoned and gassed. We took our dog to the veterinarian a couple of weeks back, and in speaking to the veterinarian, it was like she was deep in thought, trying to think of what to say next. And my wife was watching her, and it was clear this woman had been jabbed, and she was struggling just to ask the next question because she was digging in her mind. And that's how affected some of these people are. Turn the 5G on, and you're done. So, having said all of that, people are starting to finally get cranky, which is a good thing. But we're not seeing that same response that you've seen in all the countries you've mentioned. Australians are just slow to get off their backside. It's an unfortunate um, quality that has just it's grown in the last 20, 30 years. The world in which I grew up, born in 1960, I saw a different world. I grew up in a different world. We had different expectations. Now we're the role models for credulity and docility. We believe anything and will follow anybody. It's quite sad. So, to your
Hmm.
point, are we going to need help? What's the Australian relationship with the US going to be? Well, I made it quite clear the other day on another program. We are incapable of governing ourselves, even with the best will in the world. We are just incapable. We don't have the people to do it. We can, to a certain degree, we can get going, but then sovereignty. It's a great issue when you talk to people. They'll wave Magna Carta in your face and get you to yell out, Article 61, Magna Carta, the right to. Oh, please give me a break. A piece of parchment never stopped a musket. If you can't defend your sovereignty, you cannot be sovereign. That's it. You've got your right to your life. But if you get shot by a bad guy, you're dead. And we can't defend it. And this is the key strategic flaw in whatever plan we put together down here. We need to be right alongside a very strong ally until we can get back on our own feet. And I was very clear about that. And I've said this many, many times. And the only one on the planet is the US, which is handy because we've always been your allies. You haven't had a special relationship with us. We've been a largely irrelevant pimple, Anglophone pimple on the backside of the planet. But from World War II, when Britain betrayed us in the sense that they hung us out to dry, and we were of no importance to Britain, and we turned to the United States and Roosevelt and MacArthur. It was clear back then our future lay with the US. Now more so than ever. And so I'm hoping that whatever relationship we have with you, we become your most trusted partner on the planet. I mean that. And not just putting our flag next to yours in some conflict, which we do, but we send a piddling commitment. We're a typographical error in the order of battle, so to speak. Well, that's got to change. We have to start, and people are talking, DJT talks about spending money on defense, and our budget's currently to 2 or 3% of our GDPs on defense, which is a joke. He wants people to spend 5%. The starting number should be 10% and better to get us up to speed, so we can create a couple of carrier battle groups, one in the Indian Ocean, one in the Pacific Ocean, 3 divisions, a fighting corps, 3 divisions, 1 armored, 1 marine, 1 airborne, with all the support that requires. Create our own shipbuilding industry once again. Get Australian flag ship travelling up and down the coast. Cyber capability, energy capability, all that sort of stuff. So when Australia says we're with you, we turn up with something of worth in terms of genuine capability, and not just, oh, we might send you an SAS squadron here, or we might send you a battalion. No, those days are gone. That's what NATO does. They suck off the US's teat and don't want to pay. We have to learn to pay, and pay big, and actually turn up. And when we turn up, the Americans say, well, thank God the Australians are here. Somebody's turned up with some decent capability, and they're ready to fight the good fight. And so there's a whole attitude shift that is required in Australia. Now, is that going to happen? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because even the Greens, which started off as allegedly an environmental movement in this country, but they're actually just socialists and communists. Call them watermelons. They're green on the outside, red in the middle. Even one of the founders of the Green Party in this country was opining as to why both our allegedly left-wing and right-wing political parties, the moderates in both, are moving towards a party called One Nation. Now, One Nation is a nationalist party. Now, they started well, but they're not much chop. Their leader has been in for years, done nothing. The members of the party are frustrated, but the party purportedly has the philosophy that'll work, and people are moving towards it. They're going to be shocked when they find out that One Nation is as corrupted and as compromised as every other political party in this country. But the trend is there for people. They're waking up. They want change. And if they read Trump's national security strategy and took out the words United States and put Australia in, they'd be 100% on board. Now, we're not in the position. We don't have the strengths and opportunities that the US does, but in terms of looking after the people and paying our way and standing up and being upfront about who we are and what we want and being ready to fight for it and bleed and kill for it, let the other guy die for his beliefs. That mood is there. That mood is rising in this country, and we are, as a nation, slowly getting there. DJT himself is now becoming more popular. For the longest time, like any left-wing country, which Australia, unfortunately, a big chunk of it is, they had this Trump derangement syndrome in force. That's now decreasing as people see what's going on. They're seeing for themselves the evidence of what DJT is achieving overseas, the evidence of what our own politicians are not achieving of any party at all, even the one that alleges to be the one to go to. They will find out that every politician that has served in the federal parliament and the states parliaments are all corrupted, all bought and paid for, and cannot be trusted. So the people, long story short, too late, they are waking up. They are beginning to see what's necessary, and when the time comes, they'll have an appetite for it. So I see in the short to medium term an excellent relationship with the US. Long term, we want to be your best, most trusted partner that is willing to fight right alongside you to continue this great work that DJT has started.
Thank you. And I believe that's where this is heading. An interesting point you raised about the level of Trump derangement syndrome in your country is decreasing. It's very encouraging. That's an opening door and the right trajectory to be on. And to our viewers, I think you can clear, of course, everything emanating from America right now, and what we're doing to free our own country and neutralize the real enemies, the war machine, the money people that we see unfolding with Epic Fury and other operations. Some things, folks, are going to take years. You're talking about a realignment of the entire planet. You talk about
Yep.
deconstructing all the tentacles that controlled everything, first exposing it, doing it in such that people don't jump off bridges. I mean, so, but things are moving in the right direction, and things take time. And coming full circle to the beginning of our program, here in America and undoubtedly throughout the world, with these comms that we just seen out of the White House, these little video clips, they're very telling. And so everyone, also in our Global Defense War panel, there's a word that was used, and or at least I'm paraphrasing it from the panel, and it's a warning. When I asked about what's going on in the airplanes and the airports, I recall Michael Jaco saying, "Don't get on airplanes right now." Now, we're not trying to say scare everyone, but we are entering in a very dangerous phase. I'd like your final comment on this as we wrap up the show. I say it's a dangerous phase. I'm talking about right this moment through to the end of June. I use June as a date for obvious reasons because of the July 4th celebration. And then these bizarro comms that just came out of the White House. I would say that we're going to pull the trigger on some major events, more than one. Things that will be perceived as good, like new currency, things that will be perceived like as bad, or good, depending on how you look at it. The arrest of so and so forth. These things are now at the doorstep, and they have to be at the doorstep. And with these things, which are our offensive moves and our reveals of moves and things, they're going to trigger severe retaliation. Am I right about that? We elaborate on that, because this is the jugular. This is it. Would you concur that people need to be prepared right now, because as we make our moves, they will make theirs, and they could be very concerning?
Yeah. Remember that the most frightening events will be the fraud part of the war, because there are objectives to be achieved, and that's the cover story. As I said on the war panel, I believe there will be violence. It will be sporadic, unorganized. Is it safe to travel by air? I think it is. It's not like they can attack. Does that mean a plane won't go down? No, that's silly to say that. That might occur, but to my mind, highly unlikely. There will be conflict, um, but understand that the White Hats have got this. They've got this. It's under control. We're in great shape. So for those of us who know, stay calm, stay good, be prepared, watch what's going on, do what you got to do, and
Yeah.
understand that we've got this. And the last thing to remember, this is God's plan in a very real way. It's not a metaphor like God wins. We get that, but in a real way, everyone is working according to God's plan. So up until now, we've been doing man's plan. That's why it's cocked up so royally. We thought that we could do it on our own. I mean, even to me in this job, do you think I take credit for everything that we do? No. Without God, none of this would have happened. I mean, in a very real sense. And for those of you who don't believe that, read Dr. Stephen Meyer's book, The Return of the God Hypothesis, if you've got, and you won't finish reading it. It's a nice thick one. It's a beauty. But one of the key conclusions that he comes to, and this is the materialist scientists, the atheists, acknowledge this point, that there is a God, because there's no other explanation for their science. Point one. Point two, it's a theistic model, not a deistic model. The deistic model is that God made the universe and is sitting back and watching what happens. Well, the scientific evidence presented in the book proves that God is a theistic model, meaning he created everything and he is daily involved in our lives. So this is God's plan. Everyone is working to God's plan. And he is right now. And you can talk about the converging timelines. You can talk about any aspect of this war, and you'll see the hand of God at work. That's not wishful
Yes.
thinking on my part. This is hard science. This is hard evidence. And so understand that whatever happens, will there be violence? I think so. It'll be
Mhm.
sporadic, geographically dispersed. There'll be tragic events. Some will be real, more will not be real, but we're going to get
Mhm.
through this. So please just stay calm, relax, and get ready.
Yes. Thank you. Great way to end our segment. And to my producer, let's put up an image of Ricardo Bosi's book. And now to connect up with and follow Ricardo Bosi, you can also visit jmcbroadcasting.com. On the upper left-hand second tab on the navigation bar says contributors. The very top, I think underneath 107, you've got all the people that contribute to my network. Ricardo Bosi's biography is there, a link to get into his world. And so I encourage you to visit that and follow Ricardo Bosi. You can pick up a copy of his book, two places, www.wilkinsonpublishing.com.au, also on Amazon.com, but show some love to the publisher direct. And as I understand, a lot of the filth at Amazon's been cleaned out in this operation as well. So you're invited to visit Amazon.com for an acquisition of the book too. So you get two places to pick up. The greatness awaits you, Ricardo Bosi. Thank you, sir, for being here. Again, I've said this a few times. I'll close out with it. Our Global Defense War panel, we covered a lot of issues that Ricardo and I did not get to on this broadcast. So the combination of that show and this show should very well ground you and get you up to speed for where we are and what's to come between now and July. And it is God ordained, and it's a wonderful time to be alive. So thank you, Ricardo Bosi. Salute you as always. I will see you 2 more weeks here, every other Monday, and once a month at the Global Defense War panel. Thank you, sir. Let's run our promo to our producer.
Join JMC Broadcasting's monthly Global Defense War Military Panel. JMC hosts an esteemed panel of military experts, including Ricardo Bosi, Tom Lennox, Chuck Sellers, Michael Jaco, Derek Johnson, Brad Wozni, and other military guests. Join us each month, where this panel of esteemed guests analyze the current events across a broad spectrum of topics, addressing the questions and concerns that you have. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. John looks forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Global Defense War Military Panel broadcast, right here on jmcbroadcasting.com.
You know, we are in a very interesting period of time. I think you can see that as you reflect upon what you've just listened to with Ricardo and I, with these comms. And again, April, few days away, explosive month, May, explosive month, June, taking us to July 4th. Fascinating. And if you have any questions, Captain Rob Cunningham is happy to answer them in our all-new Patriot Q&A Power Hour in our private room, Thursday. Mark your calendar, April 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll be your host. This is on a Zoom private room. You chat your questions, and we answer them, mainly Rob Cunningham. By the way, he joined the Global Defense War panel for the very first time. We had a fifth seat. So on the one we just published a few days ago. So you'll want to watch. I think it was just published today, actually. You'll want to watch that. And but anyway, join us. And to learn how to gain access to this hit premium portal at jmcbroadcasting.com. And if $9.99 a month isn't for you, within all we offer, including the monthly Q&A panels, we have a free subscription. Everything we produce is free. But you can join us in the portal if you choose. We had Will Barney in January. We had Michael Jaco in February. We had Derek Johnson just a couple of days, yesterday actually, and we have Rob Cunningham. You can expect Wano Savin and many others in this platform over the course of the year. It's once a month. Come join us, April 30th. And that's really about it, folks. Another great episode with our good friend, retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi of Australia One in Australia. I want to thank Ricardo for his keen insights and brilliant analysis in helping us all to make sense of this madness. Stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.